Miss Campbell here, bringing the second half of the Civil War begins. Yay! All right. Um, as the Texans ready for war, most of our Texas troops were ill-equipped for war. Like I talked about during Soldier's Heart, the majority of Confederate soldiers just showed up in what they were wearing when they left their house. They brought their own supplies, they brought their own guns, they brought their own clothing. Because we didn't have factories to mass produce the uniforms for the South. We did, however, establish some new industries. We had a gunpowder factory in Austin. We had a factory in Tyler that made cannons and ammunition. Iron foundries opened in Rusk and Jefferson in East Texas. Prisoners made 3 million yards of cloth during the war, and the state's plentiful resources of cattle, corn, and cotton helped the Confederacy. This is actually some of the very first cattle drives happened during the Civil War. We were moving the cattle from Texas to the Eastern Front, which is kind of cool. All right, resources and strategies. So some advantages that the North had was a larger population, which meant more soldiers, more railroads to move troops and supplies, more factories to produce weapons, supplies, uniforms, whatever they needed. They had an established government that was ready to conduct and raise money if they needed to. The South had experienced military leaders. Many of their generals were top in their class at West Point. A lot of them made names for themselves during the Mexican War. Many Southerners were experienced in riding horses and using firearms because they were country people. 2/3 of the Confederate cavalry were from Texas. The South's strategies were to fight a defensive war and wear down the Union's will to fight. They wanted to fight in their own backyard. This was area that they were familiar with, and so they believed that they would beat the Union so badly that they wouldn't want to fight anymore. And they wanted to use cotton diplomacy by denying cotton to European markets in hopes of persuading European countries to recognize and support the Confederacy. And we'll find out if that happened or not. The North's strategies was to establish a naval blockade. So by putting ships out in the ocean and blocking the ports, they aren't able to get stuff out or get stuff in from Europe. To gain control of the Mississippi River to cut the South in two, and to capture Richmond, Virginia, which was the Confederate capital. There were 3 regions of the war. The first is in the east, which is around the Washington, D.C., Richmond, Virginia area. We also have the Tennessee and Mississippi area, and then west of the Mississippi. And Texans fought in all 3 theaters. Most of the battles took place east of the Mississippi, and most of the ones that we're going to talk about, we were able to read about in Soldier's Heart. So the first and second battles of Bull Run, or they call it the Battle of Manassas in the South, it was the Confederate troops held off Union's attempt to capture Richmond, Virginia. Both of these were Confederate victories. The Battle of Antietam was the bloodiest day in the Civil War. Robert E. Lee's armies clashed with Union forces in Maryland in September of 1862, and this was a Union victory. The Battle of Gettysburg, July 1st through 3rd, 1862. Lee moved north into Pennsylvania and battled Union forces. Both sides had heavy losses, but the Union won. And this was a turning point in the war because this was it for battles taking place in the North. The rest of the battles were for the Southern defense. So basically every other battle after this took place in the South. Battle of Shiloh. Both sides battled for control of the Mississippi. U.S. Grant, a Union general, gained the upper hand in the fight, which was a Union victory. And our old pal Albert Sidney Johnston was killed at this battle. The Battle of Vicksburg. U.S. Grant and Union forces began a 6-day siege. The Union was supported by a fleet of ironclads in the Mississippi. These are boats, big gunboats that were made of iron. The town surrendered on July 4th, 1863, and the Confederacy was split in two. So it was difficult to get supplies from Arkansas, Louisiana, and Texas into the battlegrounds in the East. So this was also a turning point in the war. All right, folks. This is the end for The Civil War Begins, Part 2. Again, if you have any questions, please direct those to our discussion board in the Civil War module. I hope you all have a great day. Bye.